My name is Manish. I'm the AVP talent from Virtual Building Studio. A warm welcome to all of you from Virtual Building Studio and O2 Architecture. We're excited to have you join us for today's session. Firstly, a sincere thank you to Lance O'Donnell for being with us today as a guest speaker. It's truly an honor to host this conversation with someone who continues to make a remarkable impact in this world of architecture. Lance leads Odoo with a deep-rooted connection to California living and passion for sustainable, site-sensitive design. With more than a dozen AI honors and merit awards, his work masterfully blends ecology, innovation, and place. He also serves as a director at the AI California Desert chapter, where he continues to shape important conversation around design excellence. For those who do not know about Virtual Building Studio, we provide access to top 1% of architect at half the market course, being doing it for decade. We are also proud to co-host this session with O2 Architecture, a leading design firm located in Palm Springs, California. We look forward to a thoughtful and practical discussion on how architects can delegate with purpose and grow with confidence. If you have any questions during this session, feel free to drop them in the chat box so you can always run them through during the Q&A session. Over to you, Lance.
Good to be here. Thanks for the kind introduction. I'm told everybody can see my screen, and the screen shows one of the buildings we completed in 2017, and it really was a testament to trying to wear too many hats. But thankfully, we delegated in a way that the building was a success, the project was a success, and I'm here to share some of those successes. So today we're going to go through several items, and I'm happy to take questions along the way. This isn't meant to be a one-way conversation. As much as we want to make this iterative and have question and answer sessions as we go through, that's perfectly fine for me. But we'll talk about what we're titling here, the architect's burden. Then we'll talk about what and when to delegate. We'll talk about from concept sketch to completion, and then building a reliable team, tech for architects, elevating design and quality control, and then from architect to firm leader. Many of these things overlap in a way that the conversation of each topic will bleed into other topics. And so as we go through these, we'll be hitting highlights of things that were perhaps already talked about, but we'll just give some additional emphasis on them. So let me kick it off with the architect's burden. And I love this image. So this is a local image of a guy whose car has got stuck in the sand. And so as a metaphor for a firm that's growing and maybe not firing on all cylinders or not working as well as it could be, this is just a great image. So the guy's trying to pull his car out of the sand that he's getting stuck in. In the meantime, he's getting pelted by this wind and driven sand. It's almost like he's being buried as we speak. So it's something we all sense at times where we feel like the workload starts to bury us in commitments and starts to bury us in obligations and tasks. So the elements that we deal with are often marketing. So initially, just the idea of, where does this all start out at? How do we land the clients? What is our design goals? What are the operations and staffing that are needed to pull a project off? And then who do we add to that list for completion of a project? So I would say ideally today, the conversation is really for firms of 12 people or fewer. Above 12 people, larger firms or medium-sized firms often have studios within a larger firm context where there may be firm principals, and then below the principals, project architects, and so on and so forth. For small firms, I'm saying 12 or fewer, the burden really starts out as a slow rolling set of opportunities that then become overwhelming for an architect. And so, again, the conversation really is for the small firm that's growing into a larger firm. And with technology that we'll also touch upon today, the ability for one person to pull off larger and more complex projects becomes a possibility. So, for example, I had a mentor, Don Wexler, who was a noted mid-century modern architect here in Palm Springs. And Don used to tell me that his ideal size firm was 8 people. And he would tell me that when they were doing something like the Palm Springs Airport project, he knew exactly where the project was every day. They had the old style drafting boards, and every morning staff would come in, they'd put the sheets of paper out on the drafting boards, they would start working, and at the end of the day, they put everything back in a flat file. So there was nothing left on the desk, everything was put back in the flat file. And Don would say at the end of the day, he would go to the flat file, he'd pull the drawings out, and he could sift through the actual either Mylar or vellum drawings that the staff were working on that day. And he would say, I knew exactly where the project was. This is, very similar to what we do today, where we have project files and things, they're residing digitally, often in the cloud or in some kind of server, but it's the same concept. It's the same concept that the firm leader can go in and see exactly where a project is each day just by pulling up that day's work. So while the technology has changed, the burden that's placed on the firm leader, the architect, is still the same. It's gotten somewhat easier through technology, as I said. So, here at O2 Architecture, we're a firm of 10 people. Once we get over 10, I have an increasingly hard time managing all of the pieces that I have to manage, even after I've delegated things. So, for example, I just wrote down a few things that, as we're starting out as architects, we typically have an expertise. So that expertise may be in design. We may have gone through our educational process and we may have had exemplary design, and we leave school, we start an internship, or we start doing some additional training under another architect, or maybe we even go out on our own and we use that expertise that we start with. So that expertise often can lead to commissions, but not everybody comes out of design school or architecture school with exemplary credentials in design. Often there's a broad range of expertise that folks come out with. Some people are just gifted natural leaders, or gifted natural marketers, or gifted natural client relation type personalities, where they may not be the best designers in the world, but they have a web and a connection to many, many people. And so the commissions are there, but then it's the challenge to how do we deliver these commissions? So it's really around building a team around the expertise that the architect has. So the architect, again, may be a great designer, and then building a team for project delivery, building a team around marketing, building a team around client relations, so that those particular elements can ensure a steady flow of work and future commissions. So that's kind of the architect's burden. And then that leads to what are the repetitive tasks that we encounter in our design profession as architects. And so we're encountering lots of creative tasks that goes back to one's expertise. So if one's good at securing a commission, good at marketing, client relations, then the delegation will start with concept design. And it's just knowing oneself and knowing one's expertise. And also, I'm a firm believer, there's this professor in New York, Scott Galloway, who says, anybody who tells you to follow your passions is, giving you bad advice. What Scott says is, look, what you need to do is follow what you're good at. And once you know what you're good at, then all of the other processes will follow. You can you can follow your passions once you've secured what you're really good at and how you differentiate yourself. So if one's good at conceptualization and design, then building a team around that. So the iterative tasks of sketches that then turn into, and this is from concept sketch to completion. So this is just some iterative ideas that I go through when thinking about a project. So because I've been working with my team for so many years, I can simply sketch plans and sections with some dimensions on them. And my team can then take that hand sketch and turn it into a set of documents that we can use for approvals, both client approvals, which everything starts at, and then back to agency approval, maybe planning departments, maybe building departments, maybe homeowners associations, maybe a board of directors for an institution, a hospital, whatever the client, and then the greater approval process is. So if we can go from sketching, when to delegate. For me personally, I used to be an architect that thought of myself as the guy that did everything, right? When I started out of school, I would sketch, then I would start drafting. It was on drafting boards early on, and then it turned into drafting in AutoCAD, and then building models, and then making presentations with that. And then it evolved into 3D AutoCAD and building CAD models in 3D AutoCAD, and then turning those into renders, and along with site plans, floor plans, and other things. But it always started out with, for me, a sketch, and the idea that conceptualizing very quickly the core ideas, and then having those in my early career turn into more and more detailed drawings, design development, construction documents, working with the client to identify a builder, working with the builder through the bidding process, and then through construction administration. So at one time I wore all the hats, and once I experienced the level of success and the projects were coming in quicker than I could deal with them by myself, there was a need for added technology and added staff to help augment what I could do. So early on, again, I wore all the hats, and then I started to delegate all of the both repetitive tasks, design iterations were done through other computer programs. And what I was doing, and still do to this day, is just oversee the processes. I'm not doing drafting in AutoCAD or Revit or any other design tools. I'm just looking over people's shoulders and making sure that the projects are moving forward. So the tech for architects, is just really assigning and knowing the strengths of the people around you. So it does come with building a team. And some of the things that we do to build teams, we outsource. So we've been outsourcing some of our staff requirements for the past 5 years. And the folks that are hosting this webinar have a really good stable of architects to help as your firms and as the need grows. We do have a lot of in-house talent. COVID was an interesting period for all of us. It allowed firms to reevaluate how important it was for everybody to be in one place at one time. And that evaluation came not so much organically, but it was kind of forced upon us. And once it got forced upon us, thankfully, the technology, the cloud technology, the technology to store drawings in large repositories offsite that other people could access was invaluable. So we built our team remotely, and that remote team remains today. Prior to COVID, we had 10 people in the office. Post-COVID, typically have 4 or 5 people in the office. While most are still local, they're working remote, so they're not having to commute, whether that's a half-hour commute or whatever length of time. But it's allowed us to work with standardized tools, a standardized procedure, and levels of quality that allow us to feel secure as we move through the design and development process. That we're getting to the end of the process with something that has been both enjoyable, meaningful, and with a high level of constructability. I think at this point, what I want to do is, Ishan, is there anybody who has questions thus far? Any questions out there that?
If there's any questions, just put in the Q&A section.
Yeah, please.
I'd love to.
Yeah, because I've said a lot, and I'm gonna, I've hit the highlights, and I'm just gonna go back through some of the things that lead to elevating design and quality control. All right, seeing no questions at the moment, but please, if you have them, bring them forward. So elevating design and quality control, I think that the central question here is why? Why is elevating design and quality control important? And, you folks out there may be saying, well, of course it's important because, it's how we ensure that things get built and the door to the office remains open and we get continuity and a sustainability in our workflow. Yeah, true. My experience, elevating design can lead to a body of published work and winning awards. And why is published work and winning awards important? I think it leads to a sustainable future commissions that are organic. With the right marketing, the idea that people can find an architect through some sort of search, whether it's just going into a typical Google search and looking. Those are one way to do it. Other people find architects through searching through, say, the American Institute of Architects, who are the award-winning architects in a certain area. There's also folks that will find architects through published work. So if we have a home or building that gets published in one of the home journals, a trade journal, those things do lead to inquiries that are organic. And I have to say, frankly, they're the best kind of future work, because it doesn't take a lot of convincing once somebody's found you through a publication or winning an award. They assume, and I would say rightly assume, that that firm, that architect has figured out how to consistently elevate what they're doing, and what that person may have seen in a publication is not a one-off, but it's something that the architect and the firm can do consistently. So it leads to future work by elevating design. There's also the idea that in trade publications, say Architect or Metropolis or Dwell, if a student or somebody who's studying architecture sees an architect's work published, then there's greater inquiries into future staff. And that is invaluable. One of the things that's helped O2 architecture out immensely over the years is I also teach. So I've been teaching at Cal Poly Pomona for over 20 years. And I have the ability to work with young minds and future architects. And often that leads to internships and other things here at the office that are quite fruitful and beneficial in two directions. As somebody who teaches, I have the ability to be a little bit more conceptual in thinking. I understand, because I see the struggles of students as they try to put complex programs together, conceptualize, and move a project from an idea into a final presentation. So those things are things that are consistently going through my mind. And the way to delegate and the way to talk to folks about the design challenge that they're facing also complements this idea of elevating design. So then if we talk about quality control, what is the importance of quality in the documents? And again, this may seem like it's something that doesn't really need to be talked about, because quality documents lead to fast approvals through the regulatory agencies. They lead to fewer requests for information from contractors, and then they lead to potentially fewer errors or things that may be happening out on the job site. And so the quality of the documents, the quality of the coordination of systems through consultants is invaluable. And building information models and clash detections and things like that are really important in having the challenges, having the problems found in the digital environment versus out on a job site where cost, complexity, schedule, things tend to have much greater gravity to them than finding them in a digital environment and having to work through those. So the idea of quality control, finding the challenges in the digital environment versus out on the job site is invaluable. And again, pulling the consultants in at an early date, having them work through and help find challenges. And then what we also find is in the project delivery, we have contractors who are also have a high level of experience and expertise in getting into building models and seeing where there may be additional challenges. They can use our building information models to do a number of things, from cost estimating to quantities to also scheduling and looking at the systems that are going into a building, and then how to fine tune a schedule of all the various trades that are taking place. And then the other thing that, is also important that I want to mention is this idea of performance metrics. So with technology has come a greater and greater and ease of building in performance metrics to our designs. And so whether that is a lead type program where we're looking at some sort of certification, or whether it's energy performance models. Going forward, as we look out into the future, it's going to be more and more complexities into our building information models that then lead to performance metrics that then we can assess at a high level both energy usage, carbon footprints, and then in the future, it's really how to engage and lower the carbon footprint on the construction side. So looking at the stream of building materials that are showing up on the job site, and what's the carbon footprint of the entire process, not just once the building's built, how energy efficient is that building over time? How durable is that building over time? How flexible is that building for future changes to the interior environments? So those are all important, and those are the things that I think the architectural industry, the construction industry has focused on in the last maybe forever, maybe since the Egyptians, and even before. We've focused on that durability. We've focused on the thermal human comfort. We focused on the level of delight that a interior environment or a building brings. And now going forward, we're going to layer onto that this idea of how do we lower the embodied energy of all the building materials that go into a building. So we're starting to see 3D printed buildings, which aren't new, but the idea that through a BIM model, the data can be exported directly to a construction process it's exciting. Right now, everything currently kind of looks a little bit like igloos and kind of awkward buildings, but I think with the right architects, the right focus, and as technology evolves, we're going to see more and more interesting building information models translating directly into production. Are there any questions at this point?
Lance, there were a few questions.
Okay.
Firstly, it was by George, which he asked, what difference in production / efficiency have you seen between remote and in-office from your staff? So that's the first question. There's another one.
Let me just tackle that one because I may I may forget if I have multiple questions, but thanks for the question, George. So with remote staff, there's, as I see it in my practice, two challenges. One is the easier challenge, which is a known quantity. So a known quantity would be a staff member that's already worked with me in a face-to-face environment here at the office, and then moving away to another city or for other reasons wanting to work remote. That's pretty easy because there's that one-to-one connection of knowing the person, knowing the levels of skill and talent, and what that person can take on as far as challenges that a project or projects may entail. So that's one level, and it's a pretty easy process for me to assign either full-time remote or coming into the office on occasions. And we started out with that probably in 2013, where we had a staff member who was moving to New York City. And in the move to New York City, we kept him on remote, but he'd already been here for a few years. That was our first experience with it. And we've just, as I said, with COVID, it took off. With remote staff that I've never met, and we have one remote person that, while I've spent time with her on this sort of a platform, so we're a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting, some kind of video conferencing, I've never met in person. And so we've been working together for 4 years. And what are my expectations for the level of quality and project delivery? It kind of goes back to looking at their portfolio, their abilities, vis-a-vis portfolio documents that they've created. And then it's just starting to assign tasks. And that could be design development tasks. It could be conceptual development tasks. It could be construction document tasks. And that goes back to exactly what I said about Don Wexler and his having everybody drafting on a drafting board and putting the drawings away at night. He was able to go pull, say, a reflected ceiling plan out of the drawer and take a look at how that reflecting ceiling plan is developing, thinking about how the lighting in that ceiling may need to have a higher level of coordination with consultants. And just the architect using the experience to judge and gauge where that document is, where the person that created that document is in their knowledge and ability. And then eventually it gets pretty easy because you just start turning tasks over to people because they have a track record with you, and you can kind of think of it as dating. So with a new remote person, you're kind of dating, and you're dating remotely. And then as you get more and more comfortable with each other, you're giving more and more responsibilities. So I would say that that's how I've seen it work for O2 architecture, and hope that answered your question.
So, Lance, there's another question by Ankit. How to find right outsourcing vendor? How do you find the right outsourcing vendor?
How do you find the right one? Yeah, I think for us early on, it was them finding us, right? So they were marketing to us, and it wasn't really something that I needed until I needed it, right? So when those inquiries come across my desk, if the timing is right, and so we can talk about timing as being, there's commissions coming that current staffing levels you just can't deal with. So you start thinking about outsourcing. And so that past experience with the people that have been sending you emails, consistently staying in your inbox, that's one way. The other way would be to, from your own seat, start to look at searches where you're searching out firms. And then, for example, once you find one, then it's okay, send 2 or 3 quality candidates that you think fit whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for Revit expertise, if you're looking for somebody who's at the project architect level where they can coordinate lots of consultants and junior staff people, that's one level of expertise. But often what I've found is that folks like Virtual Building Studio will have a whole host of experiences, from highly experienced to folks that can just help with entry-level drafting and drafting challenges that you may be facing. So I would start out with some kind of search, and then once you've landed on that, then just start a conversation.
Right. Thank you so much for mentioning Virtual Building Studio. We've been doing the same what we spoke about since decade. Really appreciate. Lance, if you don't mind, there's another question by George. How do you delegate tasks based on person's strengths, the person abilities, or time to be needed to be completed, etc.? So 3 points, right?
So those are always the challenges that we face, and I think the number one thing is just I think as architects we're optimists, right? So be optimistic that it's going to go well, right? And because of my teaching background, I've always taken a position where I'm going to give everybody more challenges than they can likely achieve. And I know that going into it. So when I give a task, I'm giving it knowing that maybe 80% of this the person can handle, maybe 20% they can't. Give good instructions into what the expectations are, and then see how that person performs. And again, it probably goes back to that Don Wexler and looking every day at where the project is. So, you need to monitor and stay on top of things to see what the level of output is, the level of production, and the speed at which the tasks are being handled. I think the more complex thing is how to find where people are struggling. So if they're remote, unless you're spending a lot of time watching and managing, you won't really know where folks are struggling. But that, again, is where staying on top of the project, or delegating to a senior person within the office to stay on top of that production in a way that's constructive, in a way that's supportive and not punitive. I think all of us show up every day with a level of enthusiasm to get things done and to, at the end of the day, enjoy what we're doing, right? So some people take more instructions to get to the end of the end of a success, and some take less. So, for example, the last 2 days, I've got a 15 and a 16-year-old at home, and both of them, I'm teaching them how to drive. And the 16-year-old girl, she gets behind the wheel and she's paralyzed, and she wants instructions about how to turn the steering wheel and when to brake and when to accelerate and when to do all these things, and then just got totally frustrated and threw up her hands and said, "You're not a good teacher. You're not telling me what to do." And I'm thinking to myself, well, I learned to drive by just doing it. So I said, "Georgia, okay, I get that, that you want me to tell you how to do all these things, but this stuff is really about experiencing. What does the steering wheel do? What does the accelerator do? What does the brake do? What does it mean when I turn this way? What does it mean to cut a corner?" So then I put Danilo in, who's 15 years old, and he's just much more athletic. He's driven golf carts. He's rode his bike off road. He just has many more talents and skills, and he just picks it up with, with ease, right? It's just where the person is starting out at and what level of instruction they need. I have to say that this is turning out to be a good thing with Georgia. She's now a couple days in, and she's no longer saying I'm a bad teacher. She's just occasionally needs a little bit of guidance. So I think it's the same with tasks that we may be facing, for our project development and our staffs, is just what level of instruction and coordination do they need, and helping them through managing our own expectations. And it's, there's not a one size fits all. It really is understanding people's strengths and weaknesses, not being punitive. I've just heard so many horror stories about offices that gauge people's performance just on the ability to get repetitive tasks and things done. And the level of burnout that I think happens in those environments is just, it's great. And that's probably when their staff, always looking for, another position or looking for another opportunity elsewhere where it might be more nurturing to their personality. So thinking about it, everybody as individuals, trying to support them where they're at, I think are, key to answering that challenge. Just going to turn the slide to which is the last slide, architect to firm leader.
Right.
And it really goes back to all those complexities that, we start out as architects doing everything. We wear the marketing hat, we wear the client relation hat, we wear, the designer hat, we wear the operations hat, we run the HR hat, and it may be one or two people to start out. And then with success, and I will add a robust construction cycle. So when the economy is good, and there's lots of work to go around, even the squirrels that can't find a nut in the forest will somehow find a nut, right? But you can't, as a firm leader, as an architect, rely on those construction cycles that are booming to ensure success. Booming construction cycles will definitely lead to momentary success or success during that cycle. And thankfully, from the big downturn in 2008, where everything just kind of fell apart, to starting to improve in 2010, 2011, and then all the way through COVID, we in the United States saw increasing demand for design architectural services. And through that cycle, many people got their foothold in the industry, and which is great, right? You want to graduate from school, you want to be in an environment where there's plenty of work to go around. Going out on your own and starting your own firm, you want to do that in a construction cycle that's robust, where looks like commissions will not be really, really hard to secure. But I have to say that in the downturns, and there are downturns. So right now we're going through an economic cycle that is just weird. It has people hesitating on whether to move forward with projects or not. And as architects, we cannot play both sides of the court. We can be proactive about securing commissions. We can continue to market. We can continue to do the things that we've done. But at the end of the day, we can't go out there and self-finance projects just to keep the doors open. Some people can, and that's more of a design build model. That's more of architect as developer, and those are great strategies if you can do it. If you've got access to capital and you can cover everything from securing the land through design approvals, building construction, and then marketing and selling a building. That is one level of architectural expertise, design development that could ensure the longevity of a firm, although there's a lot of pieces that have to be in place to make that happen. So success happens in robust construction cycles, but it also happens with good design, good track record, good marketing, good staff, and high levels of quality in what we're doing. So the challenge starts with architects trying to do everything, wearing lots of hats, and then learning what we're good at personally. So back to Scott Galloway, not what we're passionate about. We may be passionate at design and just not really great at it, but we may be really good at marketing, client relations, and securing that future work. Then that architect has to say, how do I build a team around me or around us to get these projects at the super high level that I know we can do it at? And so it really is understanding where you are and then having goals about where you would like to be. So this slide really talks about an integrated design team on a complex project. So this was a whole community college campus that we were embarking on. And we've got site and site design. And so architect is leader and the team is the civil engineer, the landscape architect, mechanical, electrical, and sustainability. And we move to building envelope. So the architect is again the leader of the team of structural, acoustics, mechanical, electrical, and sustainability. And we see that there's a line through there that's building information model, start to finish. There's this idea of levels of sustainability, quantifiable sustainability, and at the end of the day, qualitative sustainability. And the building fit out, so the interior, so the team may be led by the firm's interior folks, or may even be the architect. And then the team, architect, mechanical, electrical, acoustic, sustainability, could be furniture procurement. There could be a host of other sub-consultants. Building comfort, the leader, mechanical. The team is the architects. The architect's going to be concerned about, well, what are the supply and return air grills look like? Where are those? How do they fit into the overall composition of an interior space, whether it's ceiling, walls, floors, structural, how to support that, mechanical, electrical systems, and sustainability again. And then the power to the building, reducing power, on-site power generation. Again, the leader may be the electrical consultant on the MEP team, mechanical, electrical, structural, acoustic, and sustainability, always looking at how to drive down energy use, and then drive up user satisfaction and sometimes return on investment for your client.
Lance,
Yeah.
so we have Oliver Torres. He's been waiting since a while. He raised his hand. He wants to have a conversation with you, so if you don't mind. But Oliver? Oliver? Is it
He
Torres?
can also just write his question.
Oh, here he is. He wanted to have a conversation, he mentioned.
Okay.
We can't hear you, Oliver. I think there's some issue. Lance, there's another question by George again. How hard is it for an architect to delegate design/vision? Question mark.
Yeah. If you're, if you're an architect that came out of design school and architecture school and thinks of yourself as a competent designer, it can be a challenge to delegate design. I think it's easier, although not easy, to collaborate with somebody else. Again, it goes back to the core competency of that architect. So if that core competency of the architect is finding clients and having a steady backlog of work coming into the office, then the design can get delegated, right? You're making rain, you're making all the pieces come into the office, and then it's just delegating to staff to get that project from concept to completion. And it's finding the right folks. I think that that would probably be the hardest thing to outsource. I don't think, and maybe other people have other experiences, but boy, outsourcing conceptual design, outsourcing the early iterative process would be a challenge. So I think that while I don't think it's impossible, I think it could be a big challenge just from the communications, because it's so iterative and it is so multi-dimensional, pulling all those design ideas into a concept. Seems like that's something that needs to happen over trace paper and not, well, I guess it could happen over a video call as folks are iterating and looking. But again, I could be proven wrong. that since that's not the core competency that I tend to think I have is in conceptual design. That's not something I have a lot of experience in. That answers the question. I kind of punted on that one, but yeah.
Oliver actually wanted to ask some questions. Unfortunately, his mic was not working, so we have asked him to put in a Q&A. And yeah, back to you, Lance.
Back to me. All right. Well, we're getting to the end. We do have this QR code that I think folks, if they're AI members, they can get AI credit with the QR code. If you need that, just send a note in the chat to our folks here. Ishan, who's supporting this whole program in the background. But I'm going to move on to thank you, but I'm not hanging up. I'm moving on to thank you, just to have an image that we can all look at that feels somewhat reflective and serene. It was intentional to choose one of our projects that had water in it, had landscape and building, just to reinforce this idea that what we do really is can bring lots of satisfaction in terms of monetary satisfaction, accolades from peers. There's the marketing and other things that happen that a body of work is created. There's lots of reasons to want to build a robust team and deliver projects with high level of control. And it, at the end of the day, really, it's are we doing something that feels meaningful? Are we doing something that feels like the fun moments of the day outweigh the grind? And every business, whether you're a physician or a lawyer or an accountant or an architect or a carpenter. There's going to be things that are, that are a grind, and learning when to delegate those things to free up time and space for both enjoyment, joy, and doing the creative tasks that I think we as architects endeavor to take on, I think is
Right.
key to longevity and sustainability.
So thank you so much, Lance. I know thank you is not an end, but thank you for sharing such great insight and practical knowledge today. It's been a truly enriching session, and we genuinely appreciate time and effort. To all our attendees, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat or mute yourself. We would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, the floor is open for discussion. Um, just to let you know, all our attendees are eligible to receive 1.0 AI Learning Unit credit for attending today's session, which Lan already mentioned, the QR code. You can send it across on the chat to Ishan Bora. We have actually collaborated with the AIA Californian Desert chapter, and this session has been aligned with AIA CES guidelines to qualify for credits. I'm happy to open up for the session. Please feel free to ask your questions directly to Lance, if there are any attendees. Oliver,
And this video it'll be stored somewhere, right? So somebody can look at it later. And
yes, please.
yeah,
100%. So
where do they find that? Where do they find the link to maybe share it?
We will be sharing them across them. There'll be a survey form sent to every attendees, including the video. And we ran a poll simultaneously. So we have a lot of information, even from attendee side as well. But
Good.
It was a fantabulous session. I mean, a lot of learning for all, even for me and for my team.
Well, I'm happy to do it. You get to a point in the profession where
Right.
giving back just feels so natural. I often thought that, my mentor, Don Wexler, if I could have just taken his brain and put it into a young person, because his body was old, but his brain was still, firing on all cylinders. And that's an inevitable part of the human experience. Is we accumulate all this knowledge and wisdom.
Yes, please.
We get towards the end of our career, and invariably we should be sharing that as broadly and widely as we can. So it's been my pleasure.
Right. So thank you so much for your time, Lance. We will end this webinar as time is up. Thank you so much, Ishan. It was a beautiful session. It'll stay with us. We'll be sharing like I mentioned, the videos to all the attendees on their email address, the link, and the survey form. So you guys are requested to fill the survey form, and so happy to get feedbacks from everyone. Thank you so much, all the attendees. Thank you so much, Lance. Thank you so much, Ishan. God bless you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.